TORB, you're not at 2K followers yet, so why are you talking about Transformers Prime now? To be honest, I wasn't expecting to talk about the show much sooner than I thought so. However, recently I began to have thoughts after watching Transformers 1 twice by now. By the way, this movie is fucking awesome, just a pure 10 out of 10. My in-depth review will come out on my Tumblr blog sometime next week, just so that it can give y'all a chance to go see it. So, go see it. So, after watching the movie, I began to think about the overall story of the Megatron and Optimus being social revolutionaries in media such as this one and the Align continuity. In general, Transformers 1 is excellent due to how it portrays the two coins of activism. On one hand, we have Megatron wanting to completely destroy the system and using methods of violence to get to that goal. On the other hand, we have Optimus wanting to take down the system through peaceful means and then rebuilding it back up into something better. It's quite an interesting layer to their characters, especially with how close they were in the first half of the movie. Hell, like I'll get into this later, but there's also a lot of queer coding to them. It's these layers that's the reason why I am dragging the Align continuity and the IDW continuity today. Just woo! Now, let me go put out this legal disclaimer because I know how y'all TFP stans react when people make critiques about the show. It's okay for you to like this show. It's okay for me to not like this show. Hell, my favorite media in the Align continuity is Red 2015, a show that not a lot of people like. I'm gonna drag TFP to the ground below, so if you're a TFP stan, I recommend skipping this one out. I will never make you feel bad about liking a show that I don't like. That is not my thing. Opinions are the variety of life, and as long as no one gets hurt, that's okay. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get on to the main subject of the video. With how Transformers 1 handled the justice for the oppressed angle, it makes me think about the utter missed potential of this being explored in the Align continuity, as well as the missteps by the IDW Comics. First, let me recap how it plays out in Transformers Prime to fully understand what we're dealing with here. A long time ago, Cybertron was in its golden age. Somewhere in the Hall of Records in Iacon, a young file clerk named Orion Pax felt dissatisfied with the way things were run. Because, as you see, Cybertron operated on a case system where the truly bougiest of bots get a silver spoon in life, while the poorest of bots get the short end of the stick. Then one day, he stumbled across Megatron, who here was a gladiator from Kaon. He felt equally dissatisfied with the way things are run by the government, so he decided to take a proactive approach and started to protest the system alongside a fellow activist. Eventually, they both met and they started to work together in order to change things for their people. It was all fine at first, until the day they met with the council. Megatron presented a more aggressive approach towards the problem, determined to be the head bitch in charge. In contrast, Orion presented a more pacifistic approach, which impresses the council to the point where they offered the title of Prime to him then and there. However, this did not go well with Megatron. He broke things off with his friend then and there, he declared war, and that's where the main story goes. Now, you see, it's a surprising angle that TFP decided in terms of both Optimus and Megatron's characters. It not only gives a layer of tragedy to their relationship, especially if you believe they were a queer couple at one point, but it also adds a meaningful layer to why they turned out the way they did. On paper, this could have made them into one of the most interesting iterations respectively to date. However, the problem is that we're only told why they are the way they are, not shown. As I mentioned in my blog post about TFP on my Tumblr the other day, my main issue with these two in particular is that there's really not a lot to them. Megatron is just a crazy bad guy for the sake of it, while Optimus is just a pretty brick. And even then, I feel like I'm making fun of pretty bricks. This is especially frustrating in Optimus's case because we're only told of his personality and backstory, not shown it. It also doesn't help that he can come across as kind of a dick at some points, but that's a story for another day. When you factor this backstory into their characters, it brings a lot of unfortunate implications. For you see, when it comes to covering the theme of social justice, there's a very delicate line between a meaningful theme for the audience to think about and just spitting upon it that can come across as insensitive at best. I feel like what made this backstory flop in TFP as well as the entire continuity as a whole, because not only does it provide a jarring disconnect between Megatron's cruel, tyrannical personality and his tragic upbringing, but it's quite irresponsible when you think about the implications. To me, it seems like the bot with the more comfier, privileged upbringing is right, while the bot with the more impoverished, less privileged upbringing is wrong. Not to mention that we also don't see how their positions play out due to how quickly it moved on. Before any annoying people go, actually, it happens in real life. Please shut up and read a book and consider this. Social change is much more nuanced and complicated than it is on paper. While yes, there are instances of people with good intentions becoming monsters in real life, you also have to consider that most of the time, it's often people of color and marginalized people that headfront these movements. You have to think much more carefully when portraying this theme in your media, because if you portray it the way TFP did, it implies that people who come from unfortunate backgrounds shouldn't advocate for social change because they will become despicable monsters who only care about power. It's rather irresponsible for the writers to take this route, especially because it tries to push the privileged rich guy as right and the poor guy as wrong. I get rather frustrated when people try to debate critiques of this angle because to me, it shows that y'all need a lot to unpack. It also doesn't help with the portrayal of Optimus when he was Orion Pax in the first half of Season 2, because unless you're familiar with the Align books, where his personality, his position, and his relationship with Megatron is much more prominent, what else is there? He's basically Optimus except clueless, since we're only told of his personality prior to being a prime by Ratchet. It matters nothing by the end. With all of this combined, is an insensitive framing at best and an utter train wreck at worst. I can't help but think about how it would have been much more meaningful had the show been given more time in the oven, or it had writers of color. However, even then, I doubt that having writers of color would have saved this train wreck. Now, I'm going to go into brief critique of the IDW Comics before we get back to Transformers 1, because it is guilty of the same problems as Transformers Prime. This origin falls flat on its face because they made Orion into a cop. I feel like y'all would quickly put together why it makes it flat. Long story short, cops are an accessory to oppression. You cannot convince me that a cop is in the right while the impoverished miner is in the wrong. Well, I get equally annoyed at people shouting ACAB towards fictional characters who are cops because it reduces the meaning of that phrase into useless fluff. Here, it feels absolutely justified. To me, I do not see Optimus originally being part of the system that kept Megatron down. Bro would not be on board with cops in real life. He would not tolerate that bullshit. No, I do not see this as part of his character. Argue with the wall. While he does realize how fucked up the system is, at the same time, it's still the same issue. IDW writers, what were you thinking with this angle? Why? Why is this a thing? Why? Word of advice to anyone out here who wants to incorporate this origin into your writings: don't do shit like this. Just don't. Don't do it. Just don't. I'm gonna stop here because the more I think about it, the more annoyed I get about it. So overall, don't do shit like this. Thankfully, Transformers 1 is the light at the end of this very complicated tunnel, and it absolutely puts these two to shame. Like, Transformers 1 works for me because it did not fall into the same pitfalls as the media before it. A crucial detail that made it work is one thing. It makes both Megatron and Orion into minors. Throughout the movie, we see how these two became the characters we know and love through how they react to their environment. Orion is more active in his goals, but also being reckless in his actions without thinking of the consequences, while Megatron is much more quieter and tries to keep his head down in order to survive. In the first half, ultimately, they went on a journey to find the One Piece, and they found out that Sentinel is a lion-ass bitch who is hurting their people in order to pay off his debt to the Quintessence. While both are rightfully upset with how this asshole hurt them, is how they reacted to that revelation that makes the movie very interesting to me. By placing them into similar conditions, their different positions are understandable. You understand why Orion wants to achieve the goals through peaceful means, while you also understand why Megatron wants to achieve the goals through violent means. The cave argument is the perfect example of how their dynamic played out, mostly just because of how uncomfortably realistic it is. Neither of them are demonized nor praised for their perspectives, and their emotions are validated. Thus, it adds a layer of tragedy to their relationship breaking apart over the course of the story. You genuinely feel awful for how their trauma from their circumstances have shaped them, to the point where you wonder if they're gonna bounce back from this. Will everything be okay for them in the end? It also helps that by making Optimus a part of the lower class, it allows him to actually get a clearer picture of the issues faced by his people, and it drives him to do reckless but well-meaning things that are aimed at making life better for everyone. Not only does it tie back to his origins in the G1 cartoon, but it's much more meaningful than the file clerk/cop origin he had. I also really like how he's a flawed person. He's a well-meaning guy who puts other needs above his, but his recklessness also results in consequences for him and the people around him. Thus, it becomes more meaningful when he takes responsibility for his actions and strives to be more level-headed in the end. It also helps that he's shown to be much more intelligent than we give him credit for, as seen by the pieces of information he learned from the archive that he shares throughout the movie. So he has a good idea of what to do with the societal issues. It's just that he needed to develop self-control. In Megatron's case, it's also interesting to see him give into his vengeful urges rather quickly. Through this observation that I have when I watched the movie for the first time, how long has he kept quiet about his circumstances? Given his frustrations about Orion's antics, the pain he probably got from being nearly worked to death, and having his entire worldview shattered because the Prime he admired for so long turned out to be a lion-ass bitch. It's inevitable that he became the Megatron we knew. He just needed the push to act on his urges. Urges that pushed Orion away further and further until Megs crossed the point of no return. The moment he said, "I'm done saving you," it fucking broke me. Just, the D16 we knew throughout the movie is gone, and we see him become Megatron in this very moment. Just, oh my god, I literally cannot talk about this scene without at least tearing up because, oh my god, oh my god. Like I said, it fucking devastated me. The both sides are not villainized or romanticized. They're both real people who have understandable reasons to push for social change. How their society changed did not happen because of a mere speech to an audience of old robots, but through their determination to bring change. It's just unfortunate that they approached the problem in ways that resulted in them losing everything they loved, especially their friendship. Transformers 1 is the light at the end of a very complicated, frustrating tunnel, mainly because it doesn't do what the media before it did. It's rather refreshing to see this movie treat their audience's intelligence respectfully and let them put the pieces together. I'm just gonna be honest, this is the layers that TFP should have had from the beginning, but ultimately couldn't. I adore this movie so much because it's what we need in this turbulent time. Corrupt fascist Sentinel Prime, the oppressed being worked to death in the Energon mines, the underdog rising above their intended purpose, and you deciding what you want, not what others claim you want. This is genuinely the best Transformers movie to date, and I adore this so much. I cannot wait to see this again in the future over and over again. I highly recommend checking this movie out if you can. I promise that you will love this movie as much as I do. It is indeed more than meets the eye. Just like that, we have reached the end of the video. Thank you all so much for joining me on this very lovely day. This is much needed relief from like the chaos that is my personal life right now. You know, I am a college student and this semester has been kicking my ass. So I really enjoy making this video, you know. I promise I'll be consistent as much as I can. Just please bear with me. Anyways, I hope that the TFP stands won't kill me for this one. Just please, for my sake, please keep the comments civil. Just please, I am begging you. Anyways, I cannot wait for this movie to hit digital because I have an arsenal of edits I want to do for it. Just oh dear Orion Pax, how have you consumed my mind? Anyways, if you have thoughts that I haven't mentioned here, feel free to comment below. Just make sure to put a spoiler warning if you're going to go into the deeper details of this movie, you know. As of the time I am writing this, you know, it is the second day this movie comes out, so yeah, put a spoiler warning, just please. If you want to see more from me, make sure to like and subscribe. Turn on that bell for all notifications. Like I said, I'll try to be more active in the next few months, so please be patient with me during the semester. Anyways, once again, thank you all so much for watching this video. Bye!